Welcome to 5 Good Questions. I'm your host, Jake Taylor. Our guest today is Gautam Baid. Gautam is a portfolio manager at Summit Global Investments, an SEC-registered investment advisor based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. Previously, he served at the Mumbai, London, and Hong Kong offices of Citigroup and Deutsche Bank as senior analyst in their investment banking teams. Today, we're going to be discussing his book, The Joys of Compounding, The Passionate Pursuit of Lifelong Learning. Let's ask Gautam 5 good questions. But first, I'm happy to announce my literary debut, The Rebel Allocator, is now available on Amazon in both print and digital formats. You could say it's about time. I've been pouring my heart into this book for more than 3 years. A well-known SoCal billionaire received an early copy of the book and actually called me to say he enjoyed the story and was adamant that I get it made into a movie. Talk about a surreal experience getting 20 minutes on the phone with one of my heroes. My friend Tobias Carlyle had this to say: Jacob Taylor has written a modern-day investment classic. The Rebel Allocator is reminiscences of a stock operator for value investors. It's a fictionalized retelling of the lessons in The Intelligent Investor in an accessible page-turner. If you want to learn how to invest like Warren Buffett by sitting at his knee, this is the book for you. Wow, how flattering is that? I was blown away when he sent me that. I've created dozens of ad-free author interviews over the last 5 years and never asked for anything in return. If you've gotten any value out of these efforts, please do me a personal favor and pick up a copy of The Rebel Allocator. I promise you won't regret it. And now, on with the show. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. My guest today is Gautam Baid, and he is the author of The Joys of Compounding. And thanks for joining us today, Gautam. Thanks, Jake. It's a pleasure to be here. So the first thing I wanted to do is give you a compliment on this book, in that I don't know if I'm just a sucker for great quotations, and you have this book absolutely jam-packed with some of the best compilations of quotations that I've ever come across. So first of all, kudos for how did you track all of those down? It was just a function of the ongoing reading for the last many years. And, as I mentioned in the beginning of the book as well, that the wisdom of the ages is often preserved through quotations. So, and I think, I'm a strong believer in the virtues of vicarious learning. And that is one of the main objectives of this book. I mean, like we were discussing just a while back, that, I had to undergo more than a decade of, mistakes and a lot of pain to learn so much. I did not want the readers to go through all that. So that's why I've just tried to condense and distill the wisdom of more than 200 preeminent figures from history. Yeah, it felt like it was the Bartlett's quotations, but for investing, and also just in more general for some of the great minds out there. Yep. So for question number one, in your book, you state, and it's a kind of paraphrasing, I think Benjamin Graham originally, and then Buffett made it famous, but this idea that you're a better investor because you're a lifelong learner, and you're a better lifelong learner because you're an investor. So what did you mean by that? So basically, if we are learning all the time, it just helps us keep pace with the ever-changing world around us. And it also helps us seize profitable opportunities from time to time. Let me share an example to illustrate this fact. So last year, on 1st of October 2018 in India, the stock of Bandhan Bank was locked in 20% lower circuit. And it was just due to a negative short-term development, which had no impact at all on the long-term intrinsic value of the stock. And on the second day, the stock fell further, and it was just becoming cheaper and cheaper. But because I had previously read and studied Tamal Bandyopadhyay's business biography, Bandhan, the Making of a Bank, that in turn helped me obtain a very sound understanding of the business and helped me obtain the necessary conviction and become very bullish on this high quality banking franchise at a discounted price. And the stock has appreciated greatly since then. I'll give you one more good example. So right now I'm studying a software IT company listed in the US, which provides cloud solutions to insurance companies. And to obtain a more sound understanding of this business, and because I want to buy it and hold it for the long term, I've just started reading this book by Tin Zhu. It's called Subscribed, and it talks about how subscription business models are characterized by sticky customer relationships and recurring cash flows, and those models are the way ahead for value creation. So, just keeping just sort of learning all the time and becoming a better version of yourself day by day. I think, like Charlie Munger says, right? Just try to sleep a little bit wiser than when you woke up. So it's just the journey that we enjoy as value investors. This journey of lifelong learning is very, very fulfilling.
Yeah, I interviewed this guy named Sam Arbesman who wrote this book called The Half-Life of Facts. And the basic premise of it was that, that knowledge decays, the facts of the world decay as we learn new things about them. Some things decay faster than others, but really, if you're not working pretty actively to update your base set of what the world looks like, then you really are getting dumber. Like, there is no just sitting still, right? You either have to get smarter, or you're going to actively get dumber.
That's very true. Like Munger says, right? The game of life is the game of everlasting learning. So that's what the game is all about.
So question number 2, in your book, you have this equation, and it basically is like ego equals 1 over knowledge. What do you mean by that? And what are some of the investment lessons that come from that?
Okay, so this particular equation is from the chapter on humility, and it basically talks about the fact that the wiser we get, the more we realize how little we know. And in this equation by Albert Einstein, which is one of my all-time favorites, he mentions that ego is equal to 1 divided by knowledge. So more the knowledge, lesser the ego, and lesser the knowledge, more the ego. The idea here is that the more one dives deeper into any particular field, the humbler one generally becomes. By acknowledging what we don't know and exercising intellectual humility, we are putting ourselves into a beneficial position to know more, thus the dawning of wisdom. The reality is that there is no true expert knowledge in life and investing, only varying degrees of ignorance. And this is not a problem to solve. It is simply how the world works. Okay, we cannot know everything, but we can work hard to become smart enough to make above average decisions over time. And that is the key to successful compounding, which is what this book basically talks about. I've also discussed this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who once said that every man I meet is my master in some point, and in that I learn of him. Learning from and accepting help from others creates value far beyond our individual capabilities. We should look at every interaction as an opportunity to learn from the people we meet. You will be amazed at how quickly you grow and how much better you become, both as a professional and as well as a human being. I've talked about this small anecdote in the book, that a tree which wants to touch the sky must extend its roots deep into the earth. The more it wants to rise upwards, the more it has to grow downward. Similarly, if we want to rise in life, we should be down to earth and humble.
I love that. That's a really, really powerful sentiment, and it makes a lot of sense. So question number 3, how has minimalism impacted or maybe improved your investment success and approach?
So minimalism is essentially an extension of simplicity. And not only are you taking things from complex to simple, you're also trying to get rid of everything else that is unnecessary. The reality is that very few things really matter in life. And because few things matter, we should think carefully about what really matters to us and try to focus our time primarily to those things. That way we will be able to remain focused on what really matters rather than chasing the next new thing which may not really matter. And the goal is not to have the fewest number of things, but to have the optimal number of things. Applying this principle to the field of investing, it is very important to identify and focus on the few key variables that really matter to an investment decision. This vastly simplifies the process and improves the probability of a successful outcome. And it also helps us calmly think through an investment decision. It also helps us separate the long-term signal from the short-term noise. And I've shared, a couple of examples in the book also to illustrate this point, that many of us may be average at business valuation, but we can still achieve above average results by being able to put the available information in the proper context, remembering the big picture, and by being able to pinpoint the few key variables that really matter to an investment decision. Yes, reading the annual reports, press releases, filings, and the footnotes to the accounts may help us dig out some extra detail, which may occasionally give us an analytical advantage. But in my view, remembering the big picture at all times, that is the few key variables that really matter, is equally, if not more important. In the book, I've shared a few examples to illustrate this point. So I've shared the case study of a stock from India called Avanti Feeds. In case of that particular business, the key variables to monitor are remunerative selling prices for the shrimp farmers and the possibility of a widespread disease outbreak. Everything else is mostly noise. And it is this clarity of thought, this clarity in thinking, which helped astute investors in Avanti book handsome profits in the stock when the shrimp industry in India started facing a lot of headwinds in early 2018. In one of his lectures at Columbia University in the past, Joel Greenblatt explained to his students the importance of keeping the big picture in mind at all times. He said that investing success has got nothing to do with the ability to build a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It has got to do with the big picture. Focus on the big picture. Most importantly, he said, think of the logic, not the formula.
Yeah, there's a temptation, I think, for an investor to want to do so much due diligence that they feel like they're doing what they were supposed to do, and to get comfortable with an idea. And oftentimes I wonder if you're not just sort of like drilling in things that maybe you don't need to be putting into your head at that point, and creating almost really the sunk cost fallacy of your research of, well, I've spent so much time on it, it must be a good idea, right? I think it's a really dangerous, there's a balance there that I think a lot of investors, you have to kind of keep an eye on to not get too deep into it, and then you'll compromise your own decision making.
That's very true. Overanalysis leads to paralysis, and too much information is not necessarily useful information. Often it just leads to very bad mistakes. So
or overconfidence, really, that you know more about it than you.
The more you work hard, yeah. So like I've talked about this in the book as well, that we human beings are just a messy living compilation of a multitude of cognitive and behavioral biases. But the fact is, Jake, that acknowledging this reality is the first step towards attaining wisdom. So just developing the self-awareness takes a lot of time, and it's best learned through extensive experience and mistakes.
You have to hit your head against the wall a number of times.
Yeah.
So question number 4, I wanted to get your take on this because it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, is that, given the increase in the rate of change of business with technology advancements, is there any cause for concern about the durability of moats these days? I mean, it seems like, if you were Coca-Cola in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, you had this amazing moat because of basically advertising and a lot of other like Lollapalooza effects. But, now there's a million different like straight to consumer, direct to consumer goods. Like it's really tough out there. And it just seems like maybe the moats of today are not as durable as the moats of yesterday. And what are the implications of that? Do you agree?
That's very true. So consistent growth increases valuation, and consistent disruption decreases valuation. And the longevity of businesses across industries is shrinking rapidly because of the technological disruptions which are taking place. And the very concept of terminal value, which traditionally used to account for a large part of the total estimated intrinsic value of a business, that very concept is being questioned.
Yeah.
And history has taught us that most businesses end up with an intrinsic value of 0. So as an investor, why this is important is that we should always be very conservative, ultra conservative regarding our assumptions of intrinsic value. And the longevity of growth is becoming very, very scarce in today's day and age, which is characterized by a rapid pace of change. There is an accelerating trend of value migration away from outmoded business designs to new ones that are better able to satisfy customers' most important priorities. Just sample this fact. The average time a company spent in the S&P in the 1960s was almost 60 years. Today, the average is barely 10 years. Less than 12% of the companies which were on the Fortune 500 list in 1955 were still there on the list 62 years later in 2017. And 88% of those Fortune 500 companies from 1955 had either fallen off the list, had either gone bankrupt, or had merged with, or had gotten acquired by a different company.
Mm-hmm.
And this is precisely the reason why the markets give very rich valuation multiples to a select few businesses where longevity of growth is assured with a very high degree of certainty. This is a common phenomenon in the market. This is precisely the reason why you will often notice that businesses which can promise 12 to 15% of predictable earnings growth for the next 10 to 15 years are given current year PE multiples of 40x to 50x. And this phenomena often perplexes many new investors. But with the passage of time and experience, one comes to appreciate the finer nuances of the market and respect its wisdom.
So are you saying that we should just be a little bit more careful about basically how much terminal value do we assign to a given business?
Yes, we have to be very, very conservative. The key thing for all investors to remember is that the longevity of growth is always given a higher valuation by the market than the absolute rate of growth. A business which can promise more than a decade of sustainable earnings growth will be given a far higher current year P multiple valuation or any other multiple relevant multiple than another business which can just promise 2 to 3 years of hyper growth with no clarity thereafter. So we just need to focus more on the durability of individual business models. And here I would like to point out a very interesting fact. So for the last 18 months, we have been undergoing a severe bear market in the Indian mid caps and small caps. Both those small cap and mid cap indices are down, more than 25 to 30%, and many individual stocks are around 40-50%. The beauty of a bear market is that it clearly brings out in front of your eyes the most durable business models, because the stock prices of those great businesses tend to fall the least and recover back the fastest. And the most weakest business models, the most vulnerable business models, those are the stocks which get biggest hit. In times of a bull market, we often tend to mistake, our cyclical holdings to be secular long-term stories. This is a common phenomenon which happens during every single bull market. Even I have done the same.
Yeah.
But this is where a bear market is so great. I mean, people get worried about a bear market. I actually got excited over the last 18 months because I got to learn so much, and all these learnings are going to just provide such rich fruits over the next 30-40 years. Because now I know what to avoid. That is the key to long-term investing. Knowing what to avoid, what to just stay away from. That is the key to long-term value investing, and bear markets are great for that. So I'm very thankful that this bear market happened at an early stage of my investing journey.
Yeah, you always want to take your lumps. The sooner the better, and the smaller usually at that point, right?
This time I had a pretty meaningful amount of capital because I had first invested a meaningful amount of capital in late 2013, and I was very lucky because that is exactly when the previous bull market in India from December 2013 to December 2017 occurred. And that is what helped me achieve financial independence. And so this was my first ever bear market with a very meaningful sum of capital. And this is where you really get to test your mettle and get to learn a lot. So what I keep seeing on social media and Twitter is people are just looking at the stock price performance of themselves or their peers, and who faltered and who succeeded. Try to focus on the process, take away the biggest learnings, improve by learning from others and your personal experiences. That is the right positive approach to succeed as a long-term investor. One should always be humble and keep on learning. And if anyone criticizes you, take it as constructive criticism. Learn from everyone, respect everyone's opinion, and just then afterwards just collect the facts and think for yourself, and you'll be fine over time.
So question number 5, while you are thinking for yourself, how do you balance high conviction for an investment idea with a still maintaining mental flexibility about it and updating as new information comes out that seems like a tightrope that we're always walking.
That's true. So, one of the key skills to succeed in today's day and age is flexible thinking. It refers to the ability to keep an open mind upon encountering new facts or situations, and to be adaptive to changing one's stance from previously held thoughts or beliefs, however strongly held. The fact is that unpleasant facts do not cease to exist just because they are ignored. And many investors tend to ignore this reality, and they just hang on to their favorite stocks even when it makes no sense to continue. They keep throwing good money after bad and keep averaging on the way down in bad businesses, and they just keep at it until they go broke. Investing is never easy. It is a challenging balance between the conviction to follow your ideas and the flexibility and humility to recognize when you have made a mistake. Yes, you need to believe in something, but at the same time, you're going to be wrong a considerable number of times over the course of your lifelong investing journey. This fact holds true for all investors, irrespective of their stature. And the balance between confidence and humility is best learned through extensive experience and mistakes, There should always be a healthy respect for the person on the other side of the trade. Always ask yourself, why is he buying or selling? What does he know that I don't know? You must always be intellectually honest with yourself. And the great investors are active seekers of truth.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head. That's what I've noticed as well, is that the best investors they're able to detach somewhat, and take almost like what I would think Kahneman calls like the outside view. And they're observing it almost like an alien would, and then they make a more rational decision at that point.
True.
So, bonus question that we always ask everybody, and I'm looking forward to this one from you because I know how many books that you read that created your own book, and that is for book recommendation. So, what do you have for us today?
So I would like to recommend a book titled The Oracle in Omaha, How Warren Buffett and His Hometown Shaped Each Other. It's written by the former business reporter of the Omaha World Herald, Steve Jordan, and it talks about the relationship between Warren Buffett and the city he has called home since 1930. Basically, Omaha provided Warren Buffett with a comfortable home base away from Wall Street's distractions. And the city in turn benefited from the worldwide attention it received, as well as from the generous contributions from the early investors in the Buffett partnership and Berkshire Hathaway. So it turned out to be a win-win relationship for both the Oracle and Omaha. This book is a must-have in my view in the collection of every student of Warren Buffett's life principles. In fact, the rare photos contained inside the book alone are worth the price of the book. And I would highly, highly recommend it. It's also this coffee table book is also a great idea as a gifting item among value investors. Just something to note: it's not available on Amazon, so you have to order it from the Omaha World Herald website.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we'll put a link to that. Well, Gautam, that was an amazing interview, and appreciate you coming on. And here's the joys of compounding. Everyone, pick up a copy, and if nothing else, for all the amazing quotes that are compiled in there. But there's also a lot of Gautam's wisdom also that's baked into the whole thing. So thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, Jake. It was a pleasure.
Before you go, do me the huge honor of picking up your copy of The Rebel Allocator, available on Amazon in both print and digital formats. It's a business person's guide to effective capital allocation, told in a coming-of-age story of a college grad who crosses paths with a wealthy Midwesterner. It's fiction for the nonfiction reader. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you'd like to support this author and purchase their book, click here. If you'd like to become a subscriber to 5GQ, click here. And I included a couple other interviews that you might appreciate right here. Thanks. Happy reading.